Good morning. How's everybody this morning? It's kind of rainy here. It's Washington. What can I say? Washington weather. So welcome back to the free 5-day Rookie Realtor Challenge. Hello, challengers. I hope you're ready for day 2. And I asked you yesterday if you would show up, show out, and go live. Did you do that? Did you show up, show out, and go live? Well, if you did, I have a special surprise or a special bonus for you if you did. So it's not too late. It's never too late to join the free 5-day Rookie Realtor Challenge. The only time it's too late is when it's over, but it's not over. We're in full swing. And if you're catching me on the replay, hello, glad to see you. It may not be morning, it may actually be night. So yesterday we went over quite a bit of information, and I want to challenge you, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat or to message me, whichever works, but it helps the entire group if you put your questions into the chat. Now I'm actually doing a double dip here, and let me get straight. I am doing Facebook Live as well as Zoom. So let me get adjusted, and I'm also posting these on YouTube. So any of those options would work. So ready for day 2? I'm ready. So yesterday we talked a lot about prospecting. So just want to kind of summarize the whole thing when it comes to prospecting. Remember I said you can 5x your leads? 5x, if you remember, 5x is basically, let me adjust this a little bit more. There we go. So 5x your leads are basically starting with yourself and always ask. So you start with yourself, or you start with someone who you know, like, and trust, and someone who knows, likes, and trusts you. So that's that first one, right? And then you want to ask for a referral. Is there anyone you know that would benefit from my services, right? And then ask again for the referral. Ask again for the referral. Ask again for the referral. That's how you 5x your leads. So remember to 5x your leads. Just kind of remember your hand. That's kind of an easy thing to do. Well, today I want to talk about momentum. Momentum is so important when you get into this industry called real estate. Now, I hope I'm speaking to rookie realtors, and if not, that's fine. You could be a realtor that maybe feels a little stuck. You may be someone who is just considering this as their business. In any of those instances, we all feel the need to keep the momentum going. It's kind of like riding a bike. When you first start riding a bike, you don't go too slow because then you might fall, right? And once you're going, you keep going. And I'm going to keep adjusting this light. Hopefully I'll get this right. So you want to keep going till you get that momentum, right? Keep going, get that momentum when you're riding a bike. It's very similar in real estate. Once you get that first transaction, it's very exciting and you're on top of the world and you want to do your client the best service of all. However, the sale, once it's over, once it's closed, then you're looking for more business. Well, you never want to be looking for more business. You want to continue to ask for those referrals during the process. In fact, you want to prospect every day. I recommend 1 hour a day. And the best time to prospect, to me, is in the morning. So you want to prospect warm leads first. Remember I said there's warm and cold leads? Now, cold leads are basically people you don't even know. You could just be calling based on the newspaper, if you read newspaper, or if you're on the internet and you're searching for leads. There are a myriad of free lead sources that you can even Google it, free leads or free traffic. You can do that. Now, when you do that, most of those instances will offer you a free trial period. So during that free trial period, take advantage of everything that you see in that platform. That platform is called a CRM, Contact Relationship Management Tool. So you want to manage those relationships. Remember, I said it's about the relationship more than it is about the sale. So you want to always keep, and I'm going to clear this screen. I should have done this before. The screen is looking a little fuzzy to me. So on this screen, I'm going to do that. Did that help at all? Did that help at all? I hope so. So you want to remember that it's the relationship over the sale. And you cultivate those relationships and you can 5X those relationships into more leads. So I want to talk a little bit about I want to extend out more about what I was talking about when it comes to business plan and pipelines. So a business plan is basically, and I gave this very short analogy of you have your goal. How much money do you want to make this year? Put that number down. Okay. What's the average sales price in your market? Put that number down. Take that number and divide it by the amount of money that you want to make for the year. Once you do that, that'll give you the number of transactions you need. Let's just do a round number. Let's say you need, in order to make the money that you want to make, let's say you need a minimum of, I'll say 10, just to use a small number, because believe it or not, the average real estate realtor in the nation averages one sale a year. And that's because the majority are doing this part-time. I would suggest that if you're maybe in another business and you need time to get started, to get the momentum going, that might be good. But it's very difficult to learn this industry part-time because it's ever changing. The law changes, the MLS changes, the contracts change, everything changes. So it's a very dynamic business to be in, which is exciting because things change all the time. So if you're a fan of that, this will be a perfect fit. If you're not so much a fan of it, then it's just coming to the realization that this is where we're at. This is the type of market we're in. So you have that business plan that you've developed because you've set that goal. You know the average sales price. You've taken that average sales price and divided into your goal. Now you know the number of transactions. So we're assuming that it's 10 transactions that you need. Okay, 10 transactions. How are you going to get those 10 transactions? You need to prospect. Prospect, prospect, prospect. What is prospecting? Prospecting is like farming, cultivating, like a garden. I happen to have a garden or had a garden. I have 3 flower beds, raised flower beds. And I'm thinking, okay, this year I'm going to get this right. I'm going to plant all 3 flower beds at the same time and get my harvest, right? Well, I planted one and the other one I let revitalize itself from the previous year because it was an herb garden. So it kind of grew back on its own. But the third one, I prepped it, but I didn't plant anything in it. So what good did that do? I expected a harvest and I didn't plant. That's like real estate. If you don't plant a seed, water it, fertilize it, how are you going to expect to yield a harvest or any fruit from it? So think about that when you're thinking about your business. Okay, I want this business to come. I want it to come. It doesn't come from out of the sky. It comes from work. Work. You have to put in what you get out of it. You get out what you put into it. In other words, if you're not willing to do the work, then how is it that you can reap the benefits of your fruit, of your labor? So that's how you get momentum. Momentum comes from consistency, being consistent in daily activities, a daily routine. Set aside time to prospect. Set aside time to call. Set aside time to email. How much time? Their initial answer would be as much as it takes, but that's not necessarily so. Some people prospect and prospect until they get that one hot lead and stop because they have certain goals. Now, remember I said that business plan? You said you want so many transactions. Well, in order to get um, a cold lead to convert, let's say a cold lead, you have 100 leads. In order to get a cold lead to convert, the average, and that's average, conversion rate is 2 to 3%. So you're talking for every lead that's going to turn into a transaction, you may have to, if it's cold, you may have to make 50 calls. You may have to make 60 calls. It just depends. You may have to send so many emails. You may have to send so many postcards. You may have to, whatever medium you use, text. Now, that's another prospecting tool a lot of people are starting to use, and it works, especially in this online platform, because you can send text reminders, you can send text alerts, you can send text questions, and it's a way to cultivate your business from an impersonal standpoint, meaning the person doesn't know you, it's cold traffic or cold texting, and you're just kind of fishing. You're fishing, you're putting it out there, waiting for that response. I get those sort of texts now. And at first, I was a little irritated because I get them over and over and over again. But the ones that are of interest to me, I don't delete them and I don't say stop or opt out of it. Have you ever noticed that? You get texts, and it works with what's called Google Analytics or even Facebook algorithms. All of this cyber space, social media platforms, all of this information age that we're in, they there are opportunities for marketers to capture that information. And when that information is captured, it's being sold to a lot of different parties. You ever notice on your phone it says allow to track? Allow to track this app while you're using it, allow to track. That's how that information is gathered and stored. You can use that information to your benefit. That's what marketing is. And it's never been a time in history that we have been able to use this for good, or use this for monetary gain, or use this to send a message. This platform is an opportunity, this platform being social media, is an opportunity to get your message out, whatever it is you want to get out. So I'm talking about momentum. That's how you get the momentum, right? You're consistent with your prospecting. You're consistent in the activities that you need to do to get the business you want. Oh, sorry about that. I keep getting these messages. So that's a little bit about momentum. Now you want to get the business to grow. I talked about that one transaction. Well, you want to feed from that one transaction to grow your business. Now, that's one source of how to track business, right? From that one lead that you get that knows, likes, and trusts you. But you also want to open it up to your entire sphere of influence. I mentioned yesterday, maybe you know a hairdresser, maybe you know a nail technician, cosmetologist, your doctor, your dentist. All of those are potential leads for you, potential buyers, potential prospects. So don't limit yourself by just, who's in your immediate circle of influence. Expand it out. Who do you know that someone else knows? 6 degrees of separation really between all of us. So let's look at who else do we know that could benefit from our services. And that's how you continue to grow your business. And then you get a reputation. From that reputation, people begin to want to use your service because ultimately you want to work with who you want to work with. and not just take any bit of business that comes your way. Now I want to shift gears a little bit because when you get into that momentum, sometimes you might slip into an unsafe activity. I'll give you a short story. I started in real estate in 1994. And at the time, I was so eager for a sale. And we had what was called floor time or opportunity time. Now, with this opportunity time, calls would come in and we would answer it. We'd have a little script that we'd say to attempt to attract the buyer and get the business or seller, whoever was on the other line. So I'm calling and no, I'm not calling. I'm answering the phone. Hello, this is Kathy Cross, ERA Delta Real Estate. That was the name of the company I worked for. So I say this little script and the person on the other end of the line says, hey, I would like to see XYZ Street today at 1 o'clock. Sure, I can show that to you. I get their name, I get their ABCs, right? I get their name, their phone number, and email address. But actually, at the time, I didn't know I needed to get all that information. I just basically got the location of where the appointment was. Not safe. So I'm telling you this because it's a tough lesson and sometimes it could end very badly. So I'm all excited. I get the location of the property that this gentleman wants to see. And it turns out it's in this remote place. I had never been down these dirt roads before. I live in Thurston County, so I'm going down this road and I didn't know what, what to expect, but I was excited still because this was my opportunity time to meet a prospective buyer to buy a property. So I drive down this dirt road. I get there, he's not there. I open up the house and then he pulls in behind me, behind my car, like almost blocking me in and comes up to the porch. At that time, I was still like opening the door and I greet him. I open the door and you know how you kind of get the hairs that stand up on the back of your neck or shoulders and you feel a little uncomfortable? Well, that was what happened. I felt uncomfortable, but I continued on because I was excited. I wanted myself. I continue on. I open the door. I let him in. He's not really talking much. I get in and I just start walking to the back of the house. And he's just following me. And I'm talking, hey, I hadn't been to this house before. I'm just kind of attempting to make small talk. And we get to the back and something tells me to turn around. I just get the sense to turn around. And he was behind me, like almost too close. So I kind of like worked my way around him to say, this is the room. This looks like it's one of the bedrooms. I just kind of did that. And I somehow got myself on the other side of him. And during the rest of that showing, somehow it was a sense that I had to not put myself in a position where I would be trapped and not able to get out. And this happens to be Realtor Safety Month, the month of September. So I want to I'll finish the story. I guess you might want to hear it, huh? Okay. So as I finish the showing, I decide, and again, I think it's the, this Holy Spirit, I think. So I ended up standing at the door and let him finish looking at the house. And then he came out. I closed the door, locked the door. We had a few words and I jumped in my car. No, before I jumped in my car, picked up my phone and acted like I was talking to someone because he wasn't really talking much and I didn't know what that meant. To me, it was just kind of scary. So I picked up my phone and pretended I was talking to someone that I had to hurry up and get back. So I jumped in my car and I peeled around and I left. He was still on the property when I left. So I don't know what happened, in terms of him, but I know he didn't call back. He didn't buy from me. I don't even remember getting his name, phone number, and email address. And for realtor safety, I've learned some things. I met with the sheriff here, the local sheriff, Snaza. He says whenever you go to show a property in a rural area, especially, always park your vehicles so that you can leave. If you notice, most police, when they come, they turn around and they back in. That's so they can get out. So you want to be very aware of your surroundings, one. And number two, you want to position your vehicle in a way that you can leave. And number three, when you're in the house, make sure that you are between the door and the client at all times. Between the door and the client. That puts you in a position of safety. You want to be safe when you're out showing houses. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? All right, realtor safety. Definitely want you to be safe. So we'll go back to the momentum piece, gaining momentum. How do you get momentum? Well, momentum starts with routines. Now we talked about prospecting, and um, we talked about business planning, and we talked about times to prospect. I suggested the morning, and I said an hour would be great. However, having a routine is important. Having a routine such as when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to do this first, or, I'm going to do these 5 or 6 things. There's a book called Morning Miracles, which I'll put a copy of it. Well, not a copy of it, but I'll put a sample of it up on the group today so you can see. But with Morning Miracles, they have Morning Miracles for real estate agents, Morning Miracles for kind of every genre or every business. But it consists of several components. There's 6 components, and one of the components starting out has to do with listening, actually being still and being quiet. We live in such a busy society, busy world that sometimes it's hard to shut out the noise. Even when it's quiet, our minds are racing. There's so many different things going on. So being still, being quiet, taking the time to possibly meditate, possibly pray, whatever your faith or lack of faith, non-faith, non-belief is, take the time to be still and be quiet. Okay, that's one. And then the next piece of that is visualization. That's where you actually think about what it is you want to achieve, whether it's that day, that week, that month, that year. Visualize where you want to be. Let's say you want to be on a stage receiving an award. You want to be on that stage receiving that award, see it in your mind's eye. I am on that stage. I am receiving that award. And just take some time to visualize that, right? It could be something you have planned for that day, especially if you have an appointment and you want to be successful in that appointment. Visualize the person saying yes to you. Visualize the completion of whatever it is that you want to complete. Whether it's business or personal, this can help in any regard. So you want to visualize. Another step in it is exercise. Exercise helps stimulate the brain. It gets you kind of that little rev of energy. I listened to Tony Robbins, and he mentioned that he does this particular exercise every day, which is it's kind of wild. He jumps into this lake or whatever it is, a lake or pool. He said it's very cold. The temperatures are very cold. And when he jumps in there every day, he said for the last, he can't even remember how many years he's always done that. And that wakes him up, stimulates him, wakes him up. My exercise is a little more subtle. But whatever gets your gets your uh, endorphins up, gets your muscles moving, breaks a little sweat, kind of, gets your heart rate up. get your heart rate up. So you want to find that exercise that works for you. And the suggested time is at least 10 minutes. I mean, whatever works for you and your schedule. Some people kind of take that extreme and maybe do an hour, half an hour, whatever works for you, but do some sort of exercise. And another component of a routine is journaling. So if you don't write down your goals, how do you expect to achieve them? Journaling. Now, I do journaling on my phone. I do journaling on a notebook. I do journaling kind of everywhere. Basically, just write it down. If you have a thought that comes to your mind, I've had this happen to where I've thought of a really good idea and I said, I'm going to write it down, and I didn't write it down, and I forgot what it was. And I purposely told myself, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that. But I didn't. So that's a lesson you can learn from me. Morning routines. So I said, be quiet. I'm remembering what the six are. Be quiet. You can meditate or pray. Let's see. Quiet, meditate, or pray. Visualization. Journaling. Exercise. Oh, there's two more. I'll think of the two more, and if I don't mention it today, I'll go over my morning routine worksheet. And in fact, to help you out, I'll put you a morning routine worksheet up in the page. So I owe you a morning routine worksheet, and what else do I owe you? What else do I owe you? Okay. Well, I know that for sure. I know there's something else. I'll look back through it. Maybe it is a simple business plan. It's basically what I discussed already, but I want to make it as simple as possible because starting out, there's so many things to consider. This is such a um, busy business because it's like an octopus. It's got many legs and many tentacles. And it's a type of business that you really need to be diligent in what you do and be sure that you get things right. And when you are unsure, do not move forward without at least checking with your managing broker or your designated broker. Because without that, you're not setting yourself up for success. You're setting yourself up for potential lawsuit, potential claim, and I don't want that for you. Okay, so with the momentum, one tool that can help you with that is an ideal weekly schedule. What is that? An ideal weekly schedule is a schedule in which you would indicate you'd set aside blocks of time. So I talked about prospecting. That is one block of time you want to put on your schedule for 5 days. For the entire week, you want to put your prospecting time. So you put your prospecting time and you actually do it. So I have an alarm set on my phone and I have it in my calendar every day at the same time. I don't always do it, but I set it in my calendar because life happens, things change around, and you can adjust it. So I could adjust my ideal weekly schedule if that time doesn't work for me for the next day. But the fact that it's there lets me know that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now, and I can adjust it to another time. So make sure you set aside time for prospecting and put that in your schedule. What else should be in your schedule? Okay, you're doing prospecting. How about appointments? Wouldn't it be great to go on an appointment with either a buyer or a seller going to a listing appointment? But starting out as a rookie realtor, my advice would be start with buyers first, then with sellers, because buyers will lead you to sellers. Because when they buy a house, likely they will need to sell a house or they know someone who needs to sell a house or buy a house. Remember, you're going to 5x your leads. So whoever you have that first deal with, that's kind of like memorable. I remember my first buyer and my first seller. So my first buyer came by referral of my insurance broker. I had just gotten out of the military, and he asked me what was I going to be doing. I said, well, I'm going to get my license and do real estate. He says, oh, okay. I just met with some people that are looking for a realtor to buy a house. I said, great. If they don't mind, could you pass on my name and number? And he did, and they called, and I ended up selling them my first sale. That was my very first sale. And I remember my first listing, it came from a friend. So it was within the sphere of influence. The friend, um, she's since passed away, but the friend referred me to her neighbor who lived right across the street. Her neighbor ended up becoming a friend of mine after we did the transaction, but I ended up listing her house. And at that time, in 1994, the time on market was 6 months. Could you imagine? Time on market was 6 months. So 6 months of marketing, 6 months of open houses, 6 months of flyers, 6 months. I mean, there was a lot of work that was done during those 6 months to get that first listing. Now, today, things are moving a lot faster all over the nation. So that should not be a problem, hopefully. I think the problem today, or the challenge today, is getting the leads to stick, getting the clients to stick. And in getting them to stick, there are 2 contracts. The first contract is a buyer agency agreement, and that's for buyers. The second one is a listing agreement. That's for sellers. I want to speak a little bit more about a buyer agency agreement because many seasoned brokers still do not use buyer agency agreements. And the reason they choose not to use buyer agency agreements is beyond me. I can't speak for them. I can only speak for me because I have used them and I have not used them. And I've been most happiest and most satisfied as a realtor when I've used it. Now, in the state of Washington, the law has changed. The license law has changed to where if you are a buyer's agent, if you are a buyer's agent, buyer broker, then you need to have some agreement in order for that particular client to be, um, I was going to say to be loyal, but to be, I'm looking for the right word, not obligated, to be connected. That's the right word. To be connected to you in a transaction, to be represented by you in a transaction. In the absence of a buyer's agency agreement, there is an assumption that you have an agency relationship, but there's not an absolute. Now, there is an agency pamphlet that talks about if you start performing the duties of a buyer's agent, you are considered a buyer's agent. However, the buyer does not have to commit to working with you. That gets into a whole nother discussion about procuring calls and all that stuff. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I want to say having an agreement in place protects you and your client. Let's say you have a lead that you met at an open house and you've gotten their name, their number, and their phone number. And they have said, we're looking to buy something and we don't have a broker that we're working with. My recommendation would be to explain to them how you do business. Or if you're kind of intimidated about using the buyer agency agreement, you could say, this is what my broker requires, that I use this agreement anytime I enter into services with a client, right? That makes them a client. Once they sign that agreement, they are now your client. So if they go to another open house and they're interested in it, they call you. If they go to another open house they're interested in, and the person that's holding the open house wants to write the contract, they say, I already have a buyer agent. I'm already working with a realtor. And so that protects you. I should have got some water. That protects you. That protects you from losing out on a transaction. So I have been in situations where I have not done a buyer agency agreement because I was either too intimidated by the people, or I felt pretty confident that I was going to get the transaction. And in both cases, in some instances, that has worked in my favor and it has not worked in my favor. So I would like you, starting out as a rookie realtor, to practice business the way you want to practice keeping business, right? You want to keep the business that you've worked hard for. So when you get a lead and you have those conversations with them, part of the conversation could include, if you're looking to buy a home, this is my business practice, right? Set yourself up for success. This is my business practice. We enter into a buyer. I mean, anything you do is an agreement today. Cell phones, you have an agreement. Internet, you have an agreement. If you're going to get a service, you sign an agreement. That should not be something that's fearful, but yet there's a lot of fear surrounding having someone sign an agreement for service. They're not paying you unless you write into the agreement that you want to get paid in addition to whatever the seller is paying. Because in most cases, property that's on the market, in most cases, it's not the same everywhere, but in most cases, there's a sales office commission on the MLS sheet. Now, Washington State has changed. It used to be you had to offer compensation to a cooperating broker, which is a buyer's agent. Now it's changed to say you do not have to offer compensation to a cooperating broker. So what does that mean? That means you could pull up listings, you can go out and show property and not get paid. That's what that means. I mean, that's the long of the short of it. That's the short of it. And so when you pull up a listing, the SOC, which is the sales office commission, is the commission in which you would generate if you wrote that contract and that contract closed. So writing the contract and the contract closes. You don't get paid until it closes. So this is another rookie mistake, is when you get a contract and it's written, you start counting your commission. You count it because you need to put in a commission disclosure form to the escrow office to show what you are to be compensated when you close. However, if you don't close, you don't get paid. And most contracts have contingencies built in them, either inspection, financing, neighborhood review, septic, well, I mean, it could be a myriad of contingencies in a contract. Homeowners association, I mean, there's as many as there are forms, which are a lot, a lot of possible contingencies in a contract. And so the deal is not done until it's closed. So I wanted to make sure that we discussed a little bit about buyer agency agreements. So you're representing a buyer. Once you have the lead, they've turned into a client because you've entered into this agency relationship and you've had them sign a buyer's agency agreement. I hope that's something that resonates with you, because it takes a while to get comfortable doing that. And in some cases, I've trained some of my brokers to actually write the buyer agency agreement when you're writing the contract to get comfortable with it. But it's a lot easier if you start your business this way than it is to start to change your business once you've started your business. Meaning, if you've already started working with people, not getting an agreement signed. Now, a buyer's agency agreement is the only one where buyers can leave. They can choose to work with someone else. They don't even have to tell you. Whereas with a listing agreement, they're locked into that commitment time frame. Now, a buyer agency agreement does have a time frame on it, but the buyer or the broker can decide to negate the contract or relieve the other party of the obligation of the contract. In the cases where you may write a buyer's agency agreement and the buyer decides they no longer want to work with you, that's usually a conversation. And the conversation might go like, well, I have a cousin or brother or a friend of a friend who's a broker, and they're going to gift me a portion of their commission for this transaction. So I no longer need your services. Okay. That could be a conversation. Now you can turn that conversation around and say, well, if that's the case, I will match whatever your brother, sister, friend of a friend would do in that particular transaction. So I've had that happen before where the party wanted some additional compensation and for their closing costs or whatever additional expenses they had, whether it was down payment or whatever. So you can gift part of your commission. Now, if you're working for a firm, you need to get the permission of the managing broker or the designated broker before you enter into any negotiations concerning commission, because commission belongs to the firm. It does not belong to the broker. Broker earns it and gets it from the firm. Now, a lot of people don't quite understand that, but in some cases, let's say if you work for some independent companies will actually send the commission directly to you. But if you're starting out and you're new, that will not be the case. That will not be the case. So your commission belongs to the firm. Then the firm pays you, because there's things that still need to be taken out of that commission, which could be your overhead. It could be the B&O taxes for your municipality. There's excise tax. So there's the state, and then there's the local area in which you do business. They collect taxes. So those expenses need to be paid out. So when you are working with when you're working with a buyer, you want to have a buyer agency agreement. Okay. Please do that. Please do that. I had these really high-end clients that I had got early on. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to sell a multi-million-dollar house right out the gate. They worked at Intel. I met their daughter. We drove around. At that time, I was literally driving people around. I don't suggest that. I don't suggest you ride people around at all. One, it's a liability for you. I mean, I could go on and on. Anyway, I digress. So I drive all around Gig Harbor, Kitsap County. I mean, pretty much everywhere out of my area. And at this time, I was still a single parent. And I was still a single parent, and I still did not have enough income to pay my mortgage on the house that I just bought. I just bought a house right after getting out of the military. And in fact, bought the house June 1st, got out of the July 1st, got out of the military August 1st, got my license September 24th. So it was kind of a busy time. And then I was showing these particular clients a home. And at that time, I didn't know about a buyer agency agreement. I was on a wing and a prayer, trusting. So I'm driving them all over Egypt, literally, all over Egypt. We make an offer on a house. It turns out it didn't work out because there was some wetlands and there was just a lot of issues with that particular piece. That contract went away. We go back at it. We're going out. And then maybe a week goes by. I don't hear anything. So I'm following up with them, and I don't know how the conversation went in terms of whether they initiated or I did. I don't know if I called them or they called me. The conversation kind of went like this. We're so sorry. We went out to some island. I can't remember the island's name. There's a couple of islands out here. They went out to an island and found a for sale by owner and bought it, paid cash. I'm so sorry. You spent so much time with us. It still bothers me. But anyway, we spent so much time with us. We feel so bad, but this is what I'm thinking. You don't feel too bad because you did it anyhow and you didn't include me. But anyway, I went back to the office, back to work, and I got a letter from them or an envelope, and it had cash in it. Wasn't the amount of cash that I would have expected from that level of a sale, but it was enough for gas money. I guess that's where the bad part, where they felt bad enough because they wasted my time. I had to get babysitter, all of those different things. So it's so important to get a buyer agency agreement. And with that agreement, if they were to find a for sale by owner, you could write in that agreement that they would agree to pay you compensation because you are worth it. Your time is worth it. So compensation, that's how we make a living. It's commission driven. So that was a tough lesson for me to learn. And I don't ever want to see anybody in that situation. So what I would write an additional line on a buyer agency agreement, because typically what I write, if you are interested, one of the things I write in a buyer agency agreement is that I am paid from the sales office commission in the listing agreement. Now, if you heard what I said earlier, in the state of Washington, the law has changed to where you do not, sorry, all these alerts, you do not, okay, sorry, alerts keep covering the screen. You do not have to offer compensation to a cooperating broker. So if that's the case, then you could end up in a situation where you do not have any opportunity for compensation unless you initiate some other document to say you agree to pay me if I write this contract. So there's still that opportunity, but it's a risk. If you're taking the necessary steps to show property and you don't have a buyer agency agreement, that could spell no compensation. And the prospect, the client, could be perfectly happy to see you not get paid. That would not be good. That would not be good. So that's on the buyer agency side. Okay. Looking at my screen, it keeps, hopefully this is coming across okay. I did have a little issue with this particular computer. Had an issue with my grandson pouring water into it. So if it's making some weird sound, I do apologize for that. So I think I beat that horse about buyer agency agreement. If I didn't, I'll bring it up tomorrow. Have a buyer agency agreement anytime you work with buyers. Let me turn this volume up a little bit. Anytime you work with buyers, have that buyer agency agreement. Okay. One of the last things I want to close with has to do with scripts. I actually listened to a phone call with the mastermind this morning for about 30 minutes, and they were pitching just some sample conversations, which I would recommend you do before you start engaging with the public. Practice. It's good to practice because someone else could pick up on something you might be saying that would either come across, would not come across as well. The particular script session that I listened to this morning had to do with pitching someone else who you've already done business with. And this particular lady wanted to practice asking for the business. And that's something that's so important to do. Practice asking for the business. So remember at the beginning, I was talking about 5Xing your business, right? So if you're 5Xing your business, are you just going to come out and say, can I, can I, can I? Or are you going to present a compelling argument, like a compelling reason why they should work with you? What's the compelling reason? Well, only you know what that compelling reason is. I don't. I'm not you. So think of what the compelling reason it is that someone would want to work with you. What do you have that no one else does? Besides a license, that's kind of like a barrier to entry. If you have a license, real estate license, if you're a realtor, maybe that's the barrier to entry. I would say real estate license, realtor. Yes, I say realtor because we have the code of ethics. We have lobbying for property owners' rights. We have a lot more value here. Whereas, what else do you have to kind of elevate you? What sets you apart? Do you have degrees in certain things that you could um, use some of the skills that you've learned there? I happen to have a degree, well, 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's in speech pathology, communicative disorders and science, which I don't think I've ever used, except in a sense of a clinic when I was working on my degree. I did some clinicals with people with cerebral palsy, but that was it. And then I jumped into the military, and that's where I got my master's degree right after the military in health administration. So I use that. I've done some CASA training, CASA work, and CASA is a guardian ad litem, basically. So I use some of those skills. I'm on the board of realtors. I've served as the past president. I mean, I've done some things. I've served in Lions. I'm currently the King Lion. I've served in Toastmasters. I'm currently the treasurer, was the president. So within different capacities of your life, what else are you doing that you could bring to the table that no one else has? I happen to be also a breast cancer survivor, so I have that to bring to the table. I also have my mother that I'm a caretaker for, have that to bring to the table. Just a myriad of things. Whatever makes you, what is it that makes you unique that you can use to differentiate yourself from the crowd? How do you stand out? I have this visual right now of someone um, in the crowd, and you can see them clearly, but everything else around it is blurry. That's you. You want to stand out. And I think Remax had a little thing at one time. I don't know if they still use this logo, but it was called Above the Crowd. So they had this balloon that would go up above the crowd. So that was their marketing tool. So you are the lead magnet. So what is it about you that makes you stand out? Because it's really not about your company. It's not. People want to work with people that they can relate to. So what makes you relatable? How are you relating to your sphere of influence? How are you relating to the people around you? How are you relating to people you don't know that you can come into relationship with because of the things that are unique about you? Prior military, I mean, what are the things about you? We're all unique. We all have something to offer. And it's very different for each and every one of us. So use that unique proposition that you have that makes you stand out above the crowd. Get the momentum you need to move forward. Take the time to make the schedule, the ideal weekly schedule for yourself. Block out some time. If morning does not work for you, maybe it's in the evening. At one time, we would have pizza call night. which meant we would have pizza and then we would make calls until we got an appointment, and we would give prizes for that. So there's things that you could do to make this fun. It does not have to be boring. Um, I don't think I talked about scripts. That was the other thing I wanted to mention. I got about 4 minutes. Excuse me. So I want to briefly talk about scripts. I have lots of scripts that I've received from my coach, and I look at them and review them, but I don't use them rotely. Scripts are there for a guideline, but it's important to practice. So you practice talking to a friend, um, your spouse, a sister, a brother, relative. You just practice using the scripts, but you don't read the scripts. People can tell when you're reading a script and it's not. I typically hang up on people that are reading from a script, or if I think it's a teleprompt, a marketing prompt that's calling me on the phone, I hang up because at this age and time, we are getting a lot of telemarketing calls. I say we collectively because it seems like a barrage of telemarketing. And even if you're on the do not call list, sometimes you still end up getting calls. And it could be from companies that you've been in business with that have sold your information. Having said that, it's important to practice using the scripts, or at least using it as a guideline. Like there's some key points that you could address. For example, here's a key point right now. We're in the um, forbearance period, and that is about to end tomorrow. Tomorrow. So, what impact is that going to have on the market? It is going to be huge. We have the potential for a lot of foreclosures. We have the potential for prices to plummet. We have a potential for a big shift in the market. Now, is it going to happen overnight? Probably not. But is it going to happen? Probably, because the indicators are saying this shift is really going to hurt the housing market. Now, we did have a housing market bust around 2007. So is that going to happen again? Don't know. Don't know. So I got 1 minute left. I want to encourage you to show up, show out, and go live. Can you do that for me? Show up, show out, and go live in this page. When you do that, okay, I hear my office is in the background. So show up, show out, and go live. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And I will put some tools in the page for you. And I do wish you the most success. Please write your questions that you have in the Facebook group page. Or if you're not in Facebook, because I do have some people that are not on Facebook and are watching me on YouTube, send me a message. Please subscribe. If you see this on YouTube, subscribe. Please like. I'm building my audience, so I'm looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. All right. Bye-bye. Oh, let's see. Stop.